Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you this morning at 7:30 a.m. Apologies for those that I know will have not seen the messages, not seen the tweets, not seen the post, not seen my message at the end of yesterday's show, saying that today's show was slightly earlier than it usually is. And I know that some of you are tuning in at 8 a.m. going, "What on earth, Tom? Why didn't you tell me?" Well, I tried. Okay. I really tried. I tried my best. I sent messages as many places as I could to try and let you know that today's show is slightly earlier. The reason why it is slightly earlier than usual is that Mikel Arteta's press conference is at 9 a.m., meaning that I've got to start work at 8 a.m., meaning I couldn't do the show usually at 8 a.m. So we've moved it half an hour earlier. Don't worry. All will be back to normal tomorrow. It's not changing time in general. It's never going to be at this time as usual. It's always going to be at 8 a.m. unless there is a similar circumstance. So I start with my apologies. Okay, I apologize for that. But thank you to those that are here and are live, and of course those that are catching up or maybe missed the message and are tuning in a little late. That's fine. But thank you so much to you guys. Oh, Dave, Amira, Paul, Olawale. We've got Carl. We've got NSW, Chris, Temi. We've got Red Star, Angela, Bakary Lasagna, Roy. We've got Mr. Ree, Wilson, Rich, Jacob. We've got Louis, Gunnar Dave. We've got Pika who didn't get the memo. We've got Vala, we've got Dave, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you so much for everyone that continues to tune in. It really is very much appreciated. So thank you to everyone that continues to do so. And for those that have tuned in this morning as well, I'm sure plenty of you know will be catching up, and I appreciate every single one of you. If you could drop a like as well, just it really does help us out. If you could subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I mean, if anything, this is an experiment in why consistency on YouTube is a really, really good thing. Right, let's jump, shall we? I had a chat with Gilberto Silva, Arsenal invincible, of course, Brazilian international, World Cup winner, Premier League winner. I spoke with him a few days ago. Our interview was released yesterday, talking about mental health and about the impact of social media, because he's becoming an ambassador for the campaign against living miserably. And in that conversation, we also had a chat about the impact of that on the players like Kai Havertz, like Aaron Ramsdale. And we also had a really good chat about Declan Rice and about how we Arsenal have finally got their successor to what Gilberto Silva was for Arsenal during that Invincibles period. So if you haven't yet given that a watch, please make sure you do. It's over on the Arsenal Way, or you can read my article on the entire conversation with Gilberto. In fact, it's kind of a reduced section in the interview. So if you want to read it, you can. But if you want to listen to the entire thing, you can do so on the Arsenal Ways website as well. Spurs lost last night at home against West Ham United. 2 goals from Jarrod Bowen and James Ward-Prowse meant that Tottenham became the first team to take a 1-0 lead in their last 5 games and still not win any of them. Can you think of a more Spursy type thing to have happened? Because for me, I can't. I mean, being named as like title challengers when Arsenal were being basically just shoved under the carpet at the start of the season, and all of the stick that Arsenal are getting around Spurs and what they were doing. Goodness me, they are so Spursy, and we love it. We love them for it. We love Spurs being Spursy. It vindicates our dislike, but it also vindicates our what we've said in the past that we know is ultimately going to happen. And it continues to show that you don't need to worry, guys. Like, you just don't. Like, there was worry at the start of the season. Ange Postecoglou, really likable manager, crazy tactics, was getting loads of praise, was getting beaten 4-1 by Chelsea and still getting praise. And look what's happened. And I remember after that Chelsea game, I was being told by pundits and other people that apparently Spurs could take more from that 4-1 result than Chelsea could. And in the end, I don't think Spurs have won a game since. Have they not? I don't think they've won a game since. So, yeah, amazing stats for Spurs. And it leaves them in a position in the Premier League where by the end of the following weekend, they could fall as low as 9th in the table. They could. If they lose their game, I think they're playing against Newcastle they've got next. I think they do. They do indeed. If they lose their game against Newcastle and clubs like West Ham and Brighton win their games, then things will change dramatically for them as well. So just to give you a bit of a roundup of the table, because not only did Spurs win, but Newcastle also lost. Everton with a massive, massive victory for them. A huge, huge win. 3-0 goals from McNeil, Doucouré and Beto really hammered in the mistakes of Jordan, of Kieran Trippier, who had an absolute nightmare at right back, making some very high-profile mistakes. Maybe Tino Livramento will be looking at why he's not playing at right back as much. Their left-back situation obviously is causing him to come in, but I think he'll be eyeing that right-back slot very soon. But yes, should West Ham beat Fulham, should Brighton beat Burnley, and should Newcastle beat Tottenham, Spurs could end up as low as 9th in the table, depending upon how results fall and how goals are scored in those games. Manchester United as well will be playing against Bournemouth as well. So very interesting to see where Spurs are come the end of this weekend. Title challenging Tottenham. Where are they going to be come Monday? I guess we will have to wait and see. Now, moving more into Arsenal-related territory, David Ornstein has been having a conversation with The Athletic, where he does these Q&A sections, and he says it's highly unlikely that Arsenal will allow Aaron Ramsdale to leave the club in January on loan. It would need to be a significant bid. I mean, let me read you the exact quote from his Q&A on The Athletic. He says, "I don't think Arsenal would allow a loan, only a permanent, and that would need to be of a level of fee that gives the proper finances to play with, and I'm not aware of any movement on that front yet. Of course, Ramsdale wants and needs to be playing, but I hear, unsurprisingly, that he has been training well and been a model pro. Ideally for Arsenal, this would be addressed in the summer." Now, I reported, obviously, a couple of weeks back now, that an approach by a lower Premier League side in the bottom half had been turned down to Ramsdale, and that he, of course, is and continues to be exceptionally professional in training as well. So whether a move will be coming to the fore for Ramsdale in January remains to be seen. However, Aaron Ramsdale's situation continues to be pretty fluid. A lot of fans are calling for him to start the game this weekend on Saturday against Aston Villa. Oh, I forgot we were playing for a second. But I would be very, very surprised indeed to see that happen. So Aaron Ramsdale, I'd be shocked. I'd be very, very shocked indeed to see if Aaron Ramsdale is in the team. But his future remains very much up in the air. And our final story of the day is that Arsenal have been linked with a move for Sporting striker Viktor Gyokeres. He has been linked with a move according to the records in Portugal. He's been a very, very good player for Sporting this season. He moved from Coventry City, believe it or not. And the Swedish striker has been having a fantastic season out there. He scored 15 goals in 17 games so far across all competitions in the Liga Portugal, in the Europa League, in the Allianz Cup, at the Taça de Portugal as well. 15 goals in 17 games and 7 assists as well. In the league, he's got 9 and 11 with 4 assists. So he's averaging a goal contribution better than a goal a game right now. He is obviously one of the more taller strikers. He would be a very different profile to what Arsenal already have. And he is, of course, a Swedish international as well. He's got 5 goals in 19 games for the national side. Is he the different type of centre forward that Arsenal might want? I'm not sure. But obviously, I think that there is certainly other arguments that Arsenal already have kind of a tall centre forward in Kai Havertz. So is it worth Arsenal going into the market to try and sign a player that is not necessarily going to be an upgrade on what Gabriel Jesus brings us? I'm not sure. Is it worth going into the market to bring us something different, a different profile? There is a buyout clause of 100 million euros. I imagine if he was to be sold by Sporting, it would be for significantly less than that. But let's wait and see what ends up happening. Right, let's move to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, let's jump into the chat box, shall we? I can see there's a lot of people moaning about the times. As I said at the start of the show, Mikel Arteta's press conference is early this morning. It's at 9, which means I'm starting work at 8. So I can do the show at 8, and I wanted to bring you a show. So better do it half an hour early than not have a show for you guys at all. So that's why the show is starting early. Don't worry, I'll be back to the usual time tomorrow. I did try and warn everyone. I left messages on Twitter. I left messages in the community tab on YouTube as well yesterday. I said it at the end of yesterday's show, and still there are people going, why are you live now? So I tried. I really did. I tried to tell as many people as I could. But yeah, I'm sorry. Not everybody got the memo, it seems. And Jorgen says, yeah, I'm not really awake yet. This is the tiredest I've probably been for one of these shows. I had to go up extra early to sort the show out as well. Let's go to Marcus says, is Edu going to go after anyone called Victor? Hopefully not Mildred. Love Me Forever says, that's a nice name. Wow, it's like the time changed. It's almost 3:36 at home AM. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Some people tuning in at these times. I respect your commitment. I really do. Amira says, what would you classify as an established number 2? Turner wasn't a good enough number 2, and Raya and Ramsdale are too good to be number 2s. Do you think a goalkeeper older than the age of 30 that will be able to adapt to Arteta's style would be the right one? Yeah, I think that's the way forwards. There are a number of goalkeepers out there that I think that Arsenal maybe could target. I think Victor Castells at Wolfsburg. I think that is it Victor Castells? It's not Victor. It's Victor Benitez at PSV, but Castells at Wolfsburg is certainly the other one that I'd look to. Rulli as well, Argentinian goalkeeper at Ajax at the moment. Maybe he would fancy a move to Arsenal. Any of these players might fancy a move and a step up to play for Arsenal, play in the Champions League. If indeed Arteta decides to use those players as kind of rotational figures, but at least be at Arsenal and maybe have a bit of a wage increase as well to convince them to come to Arsenal and be Arsenal's number 2. Even though they're not going to be a number 1 at the club, they might be earning more money at Arsenal compared to some of the clubs that they're at as well. So I think there are some goalkeepers that maybe over the age of 30 would suit Arsenal and replace one of the 2 goalkeepers that we have now to make sure we have an established kind of hierarchy at the club. Tom says, some guy on Twitter, which is obviously the fulcrum of all reliable transfer sources, says that we're negotiating a 5 million loan and 50 million option to buy Ivan Toney. I'm not keen on the player either, but regardless of being fully made up, would you consider this? No, because I don't want Ivan Toney. So it doesn't matter how much he costs. If he was 30 million, I wouldn't buy him. Arsenal need to go and buy the right players. It's never necessarily about how much they cost. It's mainly for me, it's always going to be for me as a priority about what the player is, who the player is, and what they bring to the team and what the other options are. So it's not about necessarily even how much they are. It is more so about the player, the quality of player that we get through the door and whether or not it's the right player to sign. And I don't think that Toney is. Michael says, does Mikel have his meeting with the PGML before or after the press today? His hearing was yesterday, Michael. His hearing with the FA was yesterday. So we should be able to get some insight into what is going on regarding his potential, if any, punishment, charge, consequence from those Newcastle comments. And also, Michael says, do you think that Arteta risks a touchline suspension depending on the outcome of said meeting? Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the potential punishments that he could face. He could face a ban, he could face a touchline ban, he could face a suspension, he could face a fine. It could be a number of things. He could get a slap on the wrist. We will have to wait and see. But after the comments made by the likes of Roberto De Zerbi, the fact that he got a slap on the wrist for those comments, yeah, it's very interesting to see what they're going to do. Could it mean that he's in the stands for the games against Villa and, of course, now Brighton, maybe even an extra one against Liverpool? We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, we should get a result of that hearing, hopefully very, very soon indeed. JP says, do you think there's anything that the club can do to change the lowbrow narrative / attack on Arteta by the media because it's having a tangible effect on the undeserved yellow cards? And what can the club do? The club can't do anything, I'm afraid, JP, about the way that Arteta is perceived, the way he's talked about. All that can happen is actually it's more on the part of those that are defenders of Arteta in the media that can fight back. Like I do my best to try and bring objective, grounded perspectives on things regarding the manager, regarding my thoughts on him. I'll be critical when I think I need to be critical, but I'll be grounded when I think I need to be grounded. So, and people obviously say things like TalkSport are quite critical of Arteta. Well, this audio goes out on TalkSport's Fan Network. So we are providing that balance as well to a lot of the criticisms that Arteta can face on outlets. So it's worth remembering that. Zach says, Tom, I've taken a long break from watching the morning shows just because I've had so much going on lately. But watching Arsenal has kept me sane and driving me crazy during some games as well. Zach, I think it's really important to take breaks. And, I'm never going to sit here as looking at things as a business and going, no, I want you to tune into every single show because it benefits us. No, it's important to take breaks. It's important to take control of your life, and if you need to take a break from something, to do that, so I recommend it, and fair play to you for doing it, and welcome back. Good to see you in the chat box, Zach. Alan says, question, can we keep the show at 7:30 UK as it's only 1:30 a.m. here in Galveston, Texas? Afraid not. It will be returning to the usual time of 8 a.m. in the UK, and I assume that's 2 a.m. over there in Texas, so sorry about that, Alan. It is going to keep you staying up another half an hour later. You can catch up, remember. You can watch this back as well. Chris says, Tom, did you see Fabianski for West Ham? Still doing levels in his mid to late 30s. De Gea would be a good level number 2. As for a striker, I want to go all out for Mbappe. De Gea for me is not it. I think that if Arsenal bring in a goalkeeper, you need to be able to bring in one that has the ability to distribute, and that's the one that the reason why Man United got rid of De Gea is his distribution is not good enough. And if we have a spell where David Raya is out injured, it's not ideal. But maybe I'll be proven wrong if that's what Arsenal do. But it seems that Newcastle might be the team that are going in for David De Gea. Dave says, what about Watkins for Jesus? Again, not for me. I prefer Watkins to Tony, but again, I just think that it's the wrong profile of centre forward for Arsenal to be going in for. And he says, a twice relegated goalkeeper revived by Arsenal now wants to call the shots. There's no gratefulness. I don't think Ramsdale wants to call the shots, Andy. I don't think that's the case at all, to be honest. He wants to play, like any player wants to play. The perception of Ramsdale by some supporters, I think, is so skewed and wrong. Ramsdale has acted and been utterly and entirely professional as an individual. You can't speak for what others around him are doing or saying. He has been an absolute professional in training. He's continued to perform in training. He's continued to attend and be on time. He's not kicked up a fuss. He has just worked hard, trained hard, and played to the best of his ability when he's played. So the idea of this smear campaign from some on Ramsdale's character, I find utterly disrespectful to him and utterly detached from the reality of what he is and who he is as a goalkeeper. So, no, take it from me. We've certainly, I have, a source that has certainly told me plenty about his behaviour in training, and it's very, very good. And it's very, very good indeed. And Arteta has never said a bad word about Ramsdale either. It's worth pointing out too. Mark says, Tom, I've finally seen some commentators indicating that we're looking at possibly getting Yusuf Fofana from Monaco. Can you tell us anything about the status of our efforts? I can't tell you anything, Mark, other than the interest that Arsenal have been watching the guy, that they've obviously seen the guy. They have him on a database of a lot of players that they like, but regarding any conversations with Monaco or anything with the player's agent, I'm completely unaware of anything like that. I don't think Arsenal have made a move yet, if they do. So I have seen people start talking about him as a potential option. I've been talking about him for quite some time. But I haven't heard anything regarding anything tangible to grab onto regarding Yusuf Fofana. Dave says, I think a phone call would have been nice. I don't know what that's in regards to. And that was a combined 11 talk, not a swap. Regarding what? My head's completely gone blank on what this is in relation to. Chilo says, do we still have a better chance to win the league this year at this point of the season compared to last season? I think so. I think what Arsenal are doing this year is growing. They're building. We hit our peak very early and then trailed off towards the end of last season. It feels very much like we're building. It feels like we're very much moving in a positive direction rather than necessarily doing really, really well at the start and then having to trail off like we did last year. So I would argue, yes, I do think that. Jurgen says, am I the only one that has to listen to your show twice? First time the live chat and the second just to listen to you. You might not be. I know that some people tune into the show at 8 a.m. just because they want to chat to people in the chat box. I think that's great. I think that's wonderful that people do that. I think it shows and highlights, Jurgen, the community that we've got here, that people just tune in to have a chat, completely ignore everything I'm saying, and have a chat with people in the chat box. I think that's great. And that's why we have the Discord server. The Discord server is an extension of the chat box. And if you'd like to become a member and support the channel, you can join that Discord server by becoming an expert member or a TGT ambassador. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely worth investing your time into. Chris says, if I was Ramsdale, I'd be telling my dad to not talk and stop doing interviews, to be honest. It's Aaron's career, not his dad's, and he comes across as one of the parents living through his kids. I think that's a little bit disrespectful. I understand the sentiment of it, and I know that you're not alone in that sentiment. And to be honest, I agree in a sense that I think that Nick said too much at times that wasn't needed. I think he can certainly voice his own frustrations in the sense of, wishing that his son was playing. But I don't necessarily think that the comments have entirely been helpful. And by the way, all the heat that Sophie got regarding doing that interview, I thought was despicable. And frankly, just wasn't right. Like, Sophie at the end of the day is a journalist. It is a journalist's job to get exclusives, to speak to people, to get sources, to, it's a journalist's job. It's like, did you see Jurgen Klopp's interview the other day on Amazon, where the presenter made a little quip about it being Jurgen Klopp's favourite kickoff time at 12:30, and Klopp just completely laid into him. Like, I have an element of empathy for Klopp because obviously Liverpool have suffered with a lot of injuries and those early kickoff times have hit them hard. But it was just a little quip, I really, and like at the end of the day, this is a presenter's career. I haven't seen the presenter too much, and I don't want to be ignorant of their career, but I've not seen them too much on too many channels, so I don't know whether or not this was a really big opportunity for that presenter or not. And they've made a little quip, which presenters do, make jokes. I mean, you look at some of the shows these days across like CBS and NBC and even in the Premier League senses on and TNT Sports, things like that. There's camaraderie, there's jokes. They try to make it entertaining. There's a lot more clip type things going on TikTok and on YouTube. And for that reason, I think that, you want to, there's an input, there's an influence, there's an encouragement to make those little quips. But I don't think it was entirely disrespectful that it warranted Klopp's response in that way. I thought that was very much over the top, especially considering they just won the game. Like, it wasn't out of context that they'd lost and then you were joking around with Klopp. They just won 2-0, to continue their fight towards the title. So I thought that was, I really do think that that was a little bit unfair of Klopp. I understand why he was annoyed and I understand his situation, but I wasn't too keen on the way in which he put that journalist in that position, to be fair. Amira says, to be fair to Nick, that interview wasn't some exclusive. There was the outrage first 2 times he was on HS. Maybe not the best time for a public chat, but still, again, it's if it's more down to Nick than it is to Sophie to have those conversations. It's Sophie's. It's within Sophie's right to do a show if she wants to do a show on that, and if the person has said that they're up for doing a show, then fair play for doing it. It's what it is. I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that runs a channel that was given the opportunity of speaking to someone close to players and then choose not to do it. I really do think you'd struggle. So there you go. Let's go to boom. Indeed, Marcus, spot on. We love the Queen. Leave her alone. Indeed, you leave Sophie alone. Morgie says, Tom, Rice is the new Gilberto with a large pinch of Vieira and a touch of Xhaka. Utterly perfect for Arsenal and a steal at £105 million. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Let's go to Hussein, who says, would you keep Partey until the summer? I don't think it would be wise to sell him in January. Might as well use him in the season whenever we can. I think if there's a chance to bring in a good midfielder like a Fofana in that window, I would. Yeah, I'd be open to selling. If selling Partey means we can sign Fofana, I absolutely would do that deal. I think that Fofana's reliability, his age, makes it a lot more attractive a move to make. We're losing Partey for the African Cup of Nations as well, of course, too. So it's more games he's not going to be there for. And I think that Yusuf Fofana coming in would be a great asset for the long-term investment of Arsenal. And you can't rely on Partey because his fitness record is really poor. Is really, really poor. Paul says, can we just take a second to laugh at Spurs who've got 1 point from a possible 15 whilst quietly being top of the table? Always. And we had a good laugh at them earlier on in the show as well. So do make sure you rewind. JP says, anyone have time to do a VAR compilation of all the issues like shirt pulls in the box and give examples of given and not given? It would be hilarious content. Yeah, the inconsistencies that would be shown from that would be ridiculous. Benji says, Tom, which of our out of favour midfielders injured and not playing plays their way into the squad first? Probably Jorginho. Is probably the one who's closest to the team at the moment in terms of not starting games. So probably Jorginho. And then maybe Smith Rowe once he's out, once he comes back into the fold very soon. You'd have to think it was him. But I suppose the obvious one is Thomas Partey, really, because when he gets fit, he would play. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest indication of a player. There you go. Let's go to Boss says, would you say that we're missing Partey? Because I'm not going to lie, I forgot that we even had him. I think we are in some cases, yeah, but obviously nowhere near as much as we did when we didn't have him in previous seasons. But we do. We do miss him at some times, yes, but not like anywhere close to what we missed him last time around. Chris says, what are the other channels that you go on to called? I've seen seen a few. Obviously, Hybrid Squads, always a pleasure to join Sophie. Harry's Chronicles of a Gooner, Dan Potts' 12th Man podcast. Who else do I go on to? I'm going to start the Gooners pod, obviously. Sometimes when I get a call up, very rare. Mine doesn't really ask me on anymore, you know. I don't know why. Just doesn't ask me on. I think he thinks he's too big time now, to be honest. So he doesn't really ask me on to the Gooners pod anymore. It's a shame. It's a real shame. That man. His hubris knows no bounds at all. The Arsenal Way is obviously our channel over at football.london. It's not my channel. People keep saying to me, what's happened to the Arsenal Way? Like, I run it. I don't run it. I'm just a presenter on it. So, I'm sorry. I don't go on over there. But beyond that, obviously, I've been on the Askcast with Andrew a couple of times. I've been on with Elliot on the Vision a couple of times. I think that's about it. I think. There was a period when I was doing like 3 shows, 4 shows in a day or something like that. So yeah, I have cut back on doing a lot of things, and people do reach out and ask me to go on channels, and you know, if I'm free, I often will. But I have tried to really cut down on channels. DG Deluded Gooner, I've been on his channel quite a few times. Hugh Wizzy back in the day when we used to do those watch-alongs together before I started my new job. But yeah, it's and Judges, yes, indeed, Marcus. I've been on Judges' channel as well. Yeah, I've tried to cut down on it a bit more because obviously I think family is really important, and I want to spend more time in the evenings with the missus. So it's important to to spread your time in the best possible way. So that's why we've not doing it. Mark says, check out A Different Knock. Still an analysis, well presented, but no participation like the Gooner Talk. Thanks, mate. Yeah, I hear they do very good work. I've caught a couple of shows and aware that they do some good things. So yeah, for sure. And Tom says Tom is going to do Strictly Come Dancing. Yes, one day we'll reach a level where I get the call up to Strictly Come Down. Can you imagine? I'd be so rigid. Like I'd be so bad at that. It would be very funny. Very funny indeed. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. I know that some people are going to be tuning in at like 8 and thinking, where's the show? It was right here. You missed it. It was half an hour earlier than usual. The reason being is because I need to start work in a couple of minutes' time because Mikel Arteta's press conference is at 9. So apologies for those that have tuned in unknowingly missing today's show. The reason why was Mikel Arteta's press conference is early today, so I start work at 8, meaning I couldn't do the show. But I didn't want to leave you without a show, and so therefore I got up even earlier to do one for you. So thank you for listening. Do drop a like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new. And as always, up the Arsenal.